Regional Municipality of Niagara's Audit Committee meeting for Monday, May 25th, 2026. I'd like to call this meeting to order since we now have quorum. I'd like to call on Councillor Wayne. Could you go ahead with the land acknowledgement, please? Olson.
Thank you, Chair. Niagara region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations such as the Adirondack, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe people, including the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation. There are many new First Nations, Métis, and Inuit from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Regional Municipality of Niagara stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the land on which we live.
Thank you, Councillor Olson. Before we begin, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Being it seems we do not have any, so I'll move on to item 4.1, ACC 3 2026, the 2025 audited consolidated financial statements. I'd like to call on Nora Charette, Associate Director of Finance Operations and Systems, and Carlos Alvarez, the Auditor Partner for KPMG, for the presentation respecting the 2025 consolidated financial statement highlights. So welcome, Nora. I believe this is your rookie session.
It is, absolutely.
So
Thank
good
you
luck
for having me.
Good luck and please proceed.
I didn't realize how far apart we would be, but that's okay. Thank you very much for having me this afternoon. As mentioned, I'm here to present on the 2025 consolidated financial statement highlights for you. So the goal of my presentation today is to provide an overview of our year-end statements and some key highlights to our consolidated financial statements as well as our audit. We are also joined today by Carlos Alvarez, our audit partner at KPMG, as well as Matt Ciardelli, our senior audit manager. And they'll be speaking a little bit later towards the audit findings at the end of our presentation today. So the financial statements that you see in front of you today is the culmination of many financial reporting activities over the course of the year. On this slide, we give you a little bit of a flavor of the various reports that were brought together to council or committee over the course of the year. Most recently, we brought forward our 2025 year-end results and transfer report to Corporate Services Committee for review and approval in March. These financial statements are consistent with that report and also build off of it to reflect the adjustments that we need to make to be in accordance with public sector accounting standards, which all municipalities must follow. With Audit Committee's recommendation, these financial statements will be forwarded to Council for approval later this week, and then if approved at Council, Finance will work with our auditors to publish the financial statements. So before we get into the details of the financial statements, I wanted to take a moment to really recognize the magnitude of activity that comes together to create these financial statements. Our region has over 800 active department IDs that are managed throughout the corporation, which roll up into 18 separate and distinct lines of business. These are all then consolidated into this set of statements. This includes council-controlled ABCs such as Niagara Regional Police Services, Niagara Regional Housing, Court Services, and Transit. It also includes our 25% ownership interest in Canada Games Park. During the course of the year, we've approved over 5,300 journal entries and over 2,100 purchase orders with a value greater than $25,000. We also paid over 122,000 invoices, so a lot of transactions go into these financials. This consolidated financial statement also forms the basis of 24 different individual audit reports for different programs and departments for the organization. For example, Niagara Regional Housing, mental health, homelessness programs, and court services, to name a few. These financial statements have been audited by KPMG, and they presented the audit planning report to Audit Committee last December, where it was outlined that they would test our financial controls and focus their procedures on area of higher risk. It's important to note that given the magnitude of the information included in these financial statements, they are audited keeping in mind the concept of materiality. Now, materiality is not something that you probably think about every day, but at a high level, it's the dollar threshold that would be impacting the decisions of a user of the financial statements. So if a misstatement existed that was above the level of materiality, it would impact a user's decision, versus if it was below the level of materiality, it would not. Materiality for 2025 was set at 39 million, and based on the audit work performed, these financial statements are free from material misstatements. So next I wanted to highlight some of the bases with which these numbers are prepared because they are a little bit different than perhaps what you're used to seeing throughout the course of the year. Council in general would be more familiar with methodology used in preparing our budget. The financial statements in front of you, however, are structured a little differently because they don't have the same objective as our budget. The goal of our budget is to set taxes. The goal of these financial statements, however, is to state the region's financial position in a way that is used for public sector accounting standards. This is then used by credit ratings and other external reporting purposes. When preparing our budget, we often talk about things like encumbrances and reserves to ensure that we match appropriate funding with services that were and programs that they were approved for. The financial statements, however, don't consider encumbrances or the use of reserves, but focus rather on the actual activity that took place during the year. Our budgets generally don't consider our unfunded liabilities, such as employee future benefits or asset retirement obligations. But we fund those annually as we go, and the financial statements now have to reflect the total value of those at the end of 2025. Some of these numbers are quite sizable, but it is also important to recognize that these are common across all municipalities and all considered as part of our overall financial presentation. Finally, our budget approves our full capital projects and establishes appropriate funding for them in a forward-looking way, versus our financial statements, which consider capital in a more historic way, considering the cost of the asset and then allocating that over the life of the asset or the usage of the asset through a concept called amortization. Our capital revenues as well are recognized in the statements in the year that they were earned rather than being funded upfront as we do through the budget. Lastly, it's important to note that the financial statements are going to include all activities together as opposed to separating it by funding source, such as general levy, rate, etc. So now that was a little bit of information about sort of how we're different between our financial statements and our budgeted report. I wanted to show an overview of how we get from one value to the next. So this chart walks you through some of the actual numbers between what we presented to you as part of Corporate Services Committee in 6/2026 to go from our net operating surplus for our year-end transfer report of 10.8 million to our audited financial statements according to public sector accounting standards surplus of 168.5. Again, it's important to note that all these differences are expected and can be found in all municipalities. As part of the region's budgeting process, the region is required to prepare a reconciliation between the approved operating budget and the impact of these non-budgeted items on the financial statements. As you can see on the slide, we've bucketed everything into three main activities to convert our statements to these public sector accounting standards. A more detailed reconciliation of this is also provided in Appendix 3 to the report. The first activity that we'll look at is our net capital activity. So as our net capital activity, it has reduced our surplus by 32.5 million. This is largely impacted by two factors. We have revenues which were recorded on capital projects, but is also offset by amortization. Again, our ability to sort of divide the life of our asset over its expected useful life per its cost. The second difference that we have here is our net funding activity at 200.4 million. And this figure represents transfers to and from reserve funds as well as debt repayments. And these must be removed to have our financial statements be in compliance with public sector accounting standards. Lastly, we have our change in unfunded liabilities of 10.2 million. And this includes changes in our employees' future benefits, contaminated sites, and asset retirement obligations, which we will talk about in a bit more detail here. So we're going to look into our statement of financial position a little bit deeper, more commonly known to some people as a balance sheet. I wanted to elaborate a little bit further on our unfunded liabilities because you typically see these about one time a year when we're looking at our financial statements. So firstly, our employee future benefits. We are leveraging a lot of estimates when it comes to our employee future benefits. And as such, we engage licensed actuaries to help us evaluate our employee future benefits every 3 years. So 2025, which is in front of you, is the first year of our valuation refresh. The employee future benefit liability has increased in 2025 based on those projections, and those are primarily associated with WSIB costs. This is consistent as it has been in the past several years, and it's also consistent with other municipalities with emergency services and police functions. Looking next to our asset retirement obligation, or our ARO, you can see as well that our ARO balance has maintained relatively consistent over last year, and it is tied to our closed landfill sites. Our ARO, as well as our employee future benefits, are partially funded by our reserve balances, and you may look at our reserve balances and think that they are quite low compared to the liabilities. But because our benefits time span is substantially longer, such as our liabilities for our landfill has a more than 200-year lifespan, even though the funding status does seem low, the annual contributions should sustain this. And this is also consistent with how other municipalities approach this. Looking next to our long-term liabilities, or our debt, this is a significant item as well on our statement of financial position. So in 2025, our net long-term debt position decreased by $34.9 million. So this long-term debt that we have on our financial statements is representative of our Niagara region debt. We also issue debt for our local area municipalities, and the local area municipalities, you can see here, has increased over 2024 by 22.9. As you can see from the second chart above here, the region did not issue debt on behalf of ourselves in 2025. However, the local area municipalities did issue $57.8 million in debt. And it's important to note that the fluctuations are not unusual, but the debt position can ebb and flow over the course of the years. Staff do continue to pursue external funding opportunities to reduce our reliance on debt wherever possible. Lastly, at the bottom, you can see here an additional $429 million of regional debt, which is currently committed. This is our debt that is driven largely by the South Niagara Falls Water Wastewater Treatment Solution funding strategy, and it is our committed debt approved but not yet issued. So just to talk a little bit about our next steps before I pass it over to Carlos to wrap up with the audit findings. If approved today, these financial statements will be forwarded to the May 28th council meeting for approval. And if approved by council, then finance will connect with KPMG to finalize the financial statements and obtain our final copies. There are also currently several program audits that are underway in accordance with the financial reporting and forecasting policy. These program audit statements will be recommended for approval to the appropriate standing committee with oversight for that program. After approval, they will then be forwarded to audit committee for information. Finally, we're also working on our 2025 annual report, and that will contain the consolidated financial statements as well as a summary of our 2025 accomplishments and our treasurer's statement. This is expected to be published in June and will be submitted to the Government Finance Officers Association, or the GFOA, for the Canadian Award for Financial Reporting. For our 2024 annual financial report, we received this award for the 21st year in a row, and you'll see this a little bit later on in our agenda. And with that, I'm happy to turn it over to Carlos to share the audit findings.
Thank you, Nora. Good work on your first presentation here at the region.
Thank you.
And welcome, Carlos.
Thank you and good afternoon. We will walk through a few of the slides that are included in your package. Maybe if we can skip forward.
Oh, we don't have the slides. We were told we were just meant to speak to it.
Oh, sure. That's fine. In your package, there was included a few slides. We're going to speak to some of the highlights of the audit. Overall, in terms of the execution of the audit, I can confirm with the committee that we executed the audit in accordance with our audit plan. We did not have to pivot or introduce any new procedures. Everything went according to what we originally envisioned at the start of the audit. From an audit highlight perspective, in a nutshell, I can confirm that it was a no surprises audit. We did not uncover any misstatements, significant control deficiencies, or anything of that sort. That materiality number that Nora would have gone through at $39 million, individually, that's a pretty big number. To give the committee comfort, we have a much lower audit tolerance for audit differences, which is approximately $2 million. So if there's one number to remember in the presentation, it's that $2 million threshold. From an audit perspective, there were no fundamental changes in the underlying auditing standards in terms of how we conducted the audit. As well, in terms of the majority of our audit effort, whether it's revenues, tangible capital assets, employee future benefits, I can report to the committee that all of the estimates that we looked at as part of the audit were deemed to be neutral. That's always very important. As auditors, we look at estimates to assess whether or not they are overly aggressive, neutral, or overly conservative. And again, I can confirm with the committee that overall they are all deemed to be neutral. One important topic is that we do have procedures to respond to the risk of management override of controls. This risk is not unique to the region. This is a risk that we as auditors need to respond to on every audit file in Canada. And I can report to the committee that all of the transactions that we looked at as part of the audit were above board. There's nothing on the topic of fraud, suspected or actual, that we detected as part of our audit process. As well, in terms of the financial statements that are included in the package, we as auditors are comfortable that your financial statements have all of the disclosures that one would expect to see in a consolidated set of financial statements. We are substantially complete as of today. Some of the items that we need to wrap up would be ultimately obtaining approval that Council has approved these financial statements, updating our subsequent event inquiries with your management team, as well as updating our fraud inquiries as to whether or not there are any issues for this committee or Council to make us aware of on the topic of fraud as your external auditors. So again, it was I would say a no surprises approach, no surprises in terms of results, no misstatements, whether corrected or uncorrected. And then once we proceed on tying some of those loose ends that are all normal course and what we expect to be outstanding at this point in time, then I will be prepared to sign the independent auditor's report when they are approved. Lastly, the word independence. It is really important for auditors to raise the topic of independence. I can confirm with the committee that we remained independent throughout the entire audit process, all the way up until today. I do often get questions about, provide an example. We are not here to prepare your books and records. We are here to audit them. So again, I can confirm that we did not act in the capacity of management, nor did we prepare any journal entries and anything like that. So again, we will confirm our independence, obviously, when we issue the final audit report, but at least I just wanted to clearly communicate that with you. I do have, I guess, two questions for the committee. If anyone is aware of anything fraudulent or suspected, as well as subsequent events, if anyone is aware of any subsequent events that are material that they expected to see in the consolidated financial statements, certainly please notify us and let us know prior to when we issue the independent auditor's report. So with that, I will pause and back to the chair.
Thank you, folks, for your presentation. Are there any questions to the presenters? Looks like you're off topic. There does not seem to be any. So that being the case, thank you. And so after we get along here. Is there any, can I get a mover and a seconder for item 411 to ACC 3-2026? Moved by Counselor Olson, second by Counselor Morocco. Is there any discussion for the presentation in front of us? Well, everybody's getting off easy today, so thank you. So I'll ask the question to vote electronically, please.
Chair, I had my hand up.
Okay, sorry, Counselor Redicott.
Redicott.
Go ahead, Counselor Redicott.
Just like at home, I get ignored. I had some questions with respect to the consolidated statement. So the actual report itself, which I think is that Appendix 1 to the report, and staff maybe can respond to some of my questions. So it is Appendix 1.
Just waiting to get up on
And
screen.
yep. First one I wanted to go to was page 6.
Okay, it's not up on the screen, but can you go ahead anyway, Counselor Redicott, with your question?
Yep. So I note that the investments have been static between 2024 and 2025. And is that because some money would have been drawn from our savings in order to pay for some of the capital projects?
Already have an answer to that, or pass it on to Beth? Do you want to repeat it?
Repeat my question.
Yes, please.
So on page 6 of the consolidated, on the report from KPMG, consolidated statement of financial position, second item under financial assets is investments. It's static from last year to this year, or 2024 to 2025. And is that because some of the money in investments would have been utilized for capital projects or for whatever can be identified?
Beth, can you answer that, please?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. Really, that's just saying that compared 2024 to 2025, the money that we came in year over year has been spent. In essence, we haven't had the opportunity to have excess cash to invest. So I think that speaks to just a really stable environment as far as money coming in and money being spent, that there isn't any excess or a lot of our investments, as you're aware, are made up of reserves and capital work in progress. So that just means that we haven't spent more, or we haven't spent less than the previous year. Does that answer your question?
You okay with that, Counselor?
It does. Yes, it does. The next page talks about investment income. It has the 2025 actual, which shows an increase of about $12 million more from 2024. So shouldn't that appear on investment income on page 6 for financial assets?
Beth?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Are you okay? No, I'm okay. No, okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Through the chair, the consolidated statement of operations would represent the income that we received for our investments, but it doesn't necessarily represent if it was reinvested within those investments. So if it's being shown as an income, it's potentially that it was used to offset additional expenses as opposed to reinvesting on specific investments over the course of the year. Does that?
Okay, so if I might, Chair, to staff, if there's an extra $12 million that doesn't show up on page 6, but we know that it was investment income, what happened to that $12 million?
Through the chair,
All right,
that
go
would
ahead.
be through the transfers to our reserves. And I'll pass it over to Beth. I think she has a bit better content than I do.
Staff report on that?
Further, through the chair, further to Associate Director Shurai's response, there is a significant difference there. Twofold. We receive our investment income. So in 2025, we had a significantly higher return on investment, which was great news. We did make a decision. We have authority under the investment policy to transfer to our rate reserves, either equal to the portfolio rate or to the budgeted rate. And so we made a decision in 2025 to transfer at the budgeted rate to the rate reserves, given that the rates had, and the special levies had I'm talking largely about water and waste management, had larger surpluses this year. So those surpluses were transferred to the reserves, and we had the remaining interest stay within the operations and flow through the operating statement. Does that make sense?
And that would, yeah, and that would have been revealed in the Q4 report
Correct.
that we received.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so then back to page 6. With respect to accounts receivable, they're significantly higher in 2025 than 2024. Is there an explanation for that?
Director Branch, can you answer that one?
An answer for that one. It would have been included as part of our Q4. We do a detailed reconciliation, I believe, of our accounts receivable. I don't have that information in front of me right now, but we can take that away and provide some further feedback.
That would be great if you could do that. I don't recall what's in the Q4 report. So on the next page, page 7, there is a line under revenues, which deals with levies on area municipalities. And that shows that the actual exceeded the budgeted amount. When would the budgeted amount have been established? That would have been before, I guess, the final determination of the taxes levied to the municipalities was established.
Director Branch?
Through the chair, I think I'm having a page numbering issue. Can you tell me what statement you're looking at?
Yeah, Appendix 1, page 7.
But is it the
Levies on area municipalities. First
consolidated
item,
statement of cash flows or?
Operations.
consolidated statement of operations.
Yes, yeah, I'm
Page-
off a couple of pages. Could you repeat your question? Sorry.
The levies on area municipalities shows that the actual exceeded the budgeted amount by a small amount. And is that simply a function of the actual levies to the municipalities not being established until the end of the budget process, so that there was some discrepancy? Because I'm sure municipalities weren't paying extra money unless they were required to do that.
Councilor Reddick, I believe that's on page 5 of our report.
Okay, what does it say?
Yeah, it's on the 5th page. Go ahead, Director Branch.
Through the chair, whatever we budgeted to receive from the locals, we would have received. The differential there is going to be in relation to supplemental tax revenues. We do our best to estimate what the
Right.
growth will be in year. Obviously, that we don't know that until MPAC actually finishes their assessment, so there always will be a variance there.
Right. And the municipalities would be in the same boat. They wouldn't know at the time their budgets are set. And then finally, if I might, Chair, at the bottom of that page 7, there's a reference to planning and development. And the amount for 2025 is slightly less than 2024. And that's, so what goes into that number for planning and development?
Nora, can you handle that, or would you like Director Branch?
We have that.
You know,
Yeah, that's
You
on
know,
page,
if that's not-
page 5.
that's not,
Director Branch, go ahead.
There is an overview through the chair in Appendix 1, but if we could, we can take that away and respond back specifically in relation to that.
You okay with that, Councilor Reddick? They come back with that answer?
that would be fine. Would it be possible to get that by the next corporate services meeting?
That's
Through the
fine.
chair,
That's fine, Councilor Reddick. They'll come back with that answer for you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Councilor Reddick. Move on to Councilor Olson.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and I believe the answer could be found to that question. I had it on my list, and it was on page 36, which was Appendix 1. And apparently there's a comparison in the segmented data that shows last year the difference was some 47, and this year it's 46, and that's made up of salaries, wages. And what I wanted to ask about was external transfers. What's an external transfer?
Director Branch, can you handle that, or? Need more specifics on that? Yeah. Also, can you be a little bit more specific on the question for her?
That's page 36, and,
Is that page 14 of the draft summary?
no, it's on page 36, Appendix 1 of the financial statements.
Yeah. Again, Counselor Olson, could we get back to you with that answer for you before corporate services?
Oh, sure.
Counselor-
And you said that there's, you referred to 18 lines of business. Do we have segmented reports on each one of them, or did you group them as, because that might be of interest to me to see what the segmented statements look like, the operating statement looks like.
Through the
Back to
chair.
Nora on that, go ahead.
Through the chair, we don't have specific financial statements for every single one of them. We do have for several of them, for example, for courts, Niagara Regional Transit, and what have you. The way we have our books positioned, it's not necessarily simple task to unreconcile everything
Yeah.
that we have consolidated, so not for all 18,
Yeah.
at least not readily available.
Okay. And I was looking at the statements. I was kind of hoping for some kind of an overall statement, perhaps from Mr. Ellis on what the financial statements look like, because from my perspective, it looks to me like there's been a pretty good job handling the expenses, keeping the expenses down, from what I see. And we're left with a surplus of 168 over 128 from last year. And I wonder where that surplus goes now. It must go into a reserve, I hope, and it's not going into some further spending pot. But I would have to say that this is a fairly good financial statements, and we're seeing the results of some of our efforts. And I wouldn't predict that we'd have our credit rating would change from this, except for perhaps to improve. So.
So, Acting CAO Ellis, can you respond to that? It sounds like a good news story.
Thank you. Through the chair, Counselor, I think anytime that we drive a small surplus is a good news story. It reflects both good budgeting on behalf of council and staff, as well as adherence to the budgets that we have. So I consider it a good news story. I'm always happy to see a small surplus. It means that we're pretty much on there. We don't want to ever run a large surplus or a deficit. So I think that's always a good news story.
Any further, Counselor Olson?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I think where that money goes now is important, because if we have huge surpluses, that's a problem too for our taxpayers. But now we know that we have a surplus, and where does that go now? Does it go into a reserve?
Director Branch? Or back to Nora?
Through the chair, we have our transfer report that was presented in March to Corporate Services Committee, and that makes the recommendation of the reserves with which to put our different surplus amounts. And then also Note 11 would speak to the accumulated surplus and how that's actually broken down for the organization over the course of our history, as it's an ongoing number.
Okay, and then finally, Chair, I have a question about long-term liabilities. There's a note that refers to the debt limit on page 9, or note 8, page 9. What is our debt limit for the region?
Through the chair, I believe it's 25% for the annual debt limit, but I did put a note down about that, so let me just pull up my notes here.
That's on page 9, Counselor Olson?
That's correct, page 9.
All right, so we have a 25% annual repayment limit. That was the acronym I was looking for in my brain, and that's set by the province. It's a very high number, however, so municipalities typically wouldn't be trying to meet the 25% repayment because it wouldn't be financially sustainable in the long run.
Okay. Thank you. That, along with not taking out any new debt in the year, is, as far as I'm concerned, is a good step for our region. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Olson, and thank you to the presenters. Appreciate it. So any other further questions? Being that there seems not to be any, I'll ask for the question. Is there, we have a mover by Counselor Olson, second by Counselor Morocco. Number 4.1 ACC 3-26. I'll ask for a vote electronically, please. And that has moved. Thank you. Let's move on to number 5, consent items for information. Oh,
We figured out what the external transfer.
okay, before we move along in the same motion, we've located the answer to internal transfers, external transfers. Go ahead, Director Bruns.
Through the chair, just in the interest of being timely, I apologize for not knowing the answer off the hop, but that external transfer line under planning and development in the segmented information is largely related to our grants and incentives.
Thank you,
you.
Director Bruns. So now we'll move on to consent items 5.1 ACC 4-2026. I'll call Henry Murray, the Manager of Internal Audit, for the presentation respecting the status update on internal audit engagements. So once Harry gets to the podium. Go ahead, Harry.
Thank you, Chair. As each quarter, I present a quick summary of all the audits that are planned for 2026-27, and also give a summary of the audits that were completed in the specific quarter. It will be the same agenda even for this presentation. So these were the audits that were planned for 2026-27 period. We start with the whistleblower complaint reporting and investigation processes. So as you can see, the audit is complete, and I'll be presenting a summary report. The detailed report is part of the appendix. The second audit that was planned for this period is waste management. This was done by KPMG. The report is complete. It is going through the management action plan process. So we are looking at the findings and working through the action plans on who will be implementing it, how much time it would take. We tried really hard to push the report to this meeting, but because of because of a couple of findings which need a little more detail, like who is responsible, is it the contractor's responsibility or is it the region's responsibility? So there's been some back and forth on some of the recommendations, and we are fine tuning it, and we'll be presenting it in July. The third engagement that is planned for this year is the Brownfield Tax Increment Grant Program. So on this, we're in a good shape right now. I've gone through quite a few samples, and I'm working with the team to finalize the findings and the recommendations. This is not a typical audit. It's more of a consulting project where we are looking at a grant program that is complete and delivered. It ended end of March of 2026, but it is a good time to go through the process and identify lessons learned and what we could do in case we plan to implement a new grant program in the future. So it is being looked at in that lens. And moving on to the Strategic Transformation Office, this was planned for later part of the year, but we bumped it up slightly because there's been movement in this field. The CAO's office is working with the local area municipalities, going through the shared services and looking at things they can optimize. But from an audit standpoint, I cannot participate really in the decision-making process. That has to happen from the management part. They have to decide like which services will be consolidated, which will be merged, which will be downloaded to the local area municipalities. Once decisions are made, I can then do a detailed review of risks and cost benefit and value for these shared services. So I'll be tracking closely the progress of the outcomes of these meetings, and then be ready to initiate a review as and when we have a few decisions. The reason being, to add on to the previous speaker, like we are held accountable to have independence. So I cannot participate in decision-making process and then again audit it, because there is a high probability that I might say it's all good. So I have to keep myself available and wait for the decisions to happen and then do a review of the work that is happening right now. And then moving on to the psychological wellness programs. There is nothing to update on this plan. We've just started working on this project. I've started working on the scope, and I'll have to reach out to the teams to discuss the timelines and the milestones. These are mostly the audits that are being done internally by me. And there's also the Niagara Regional Transit, which again, we are at the planning stage. I'm still working through a few details on what we should be covering. There are multiple requests to look at the specialized transit, to look at the ridership metrics, to look at the data governance that is happening at the regional transit, and also to look at the resources that they have. So I'm working through the finer details of this project, and once I have an update, I'll present it in the next in September or maybe in the next July meeting. The remaining audits that are on this slide, they're mostly external audits. We'll be working on the RFPs and then initiating the issuing it for outside firms. So for the competitive bidding process and single source, I've given a detailed update in the previous meeting. Just to recap quickly. So for the procurement data, the bylaw was implemented in around March. We've done these audits thrice in the past using the old data, using the old bylaw, and the new bylaw has just started. So at this stage, if we initiate an audit, we'll be again doing the audit on the old data, which is not really a good value for our money. So it is a good idea to wait till September. And then once we have 6 months data, it is a good idea to compare the new data with the old one and see if the new bylaw has actually helped us improve the processes and make them more efficient. The plan is to go for an RFP during August time and then have an auditor onboarded by September and start it in around the Q4 of this year. And for the homelessness service providers audit, I've discussed the scope with the community services and we are going through some of the finer details. Once it is finalized, I'll be reaching out and issuing the RFP. For cyber planning and biosolids, I currently do not have any updates. I'm still working on the scope, and once I reach out to the teams and then I have updates, I'll be presenting them as we go through. Now, to give a summary of the audit that we've recently completed on the whistleblower, the primary idea was to look at the volume of complaints that we are receiving. And to make sure that we are conducting the investigations thoroughly and transparently. And also the idea is to look at the other tier 1 municipalities and look at good practices that we can adopt here at the region. So as a part of this review, I've selected samples from 2023 till Q1 of 2026, and I've reviewed almost 12% of the tracked population. We did not have a lot of complaints, slightly above 40 maybe, which is much lesser than other tier 1 municipalities that we've been comparing. But we are holding ourselves up to a higher standard. So it is though it is not really like an apples to apples comparison, it is still good to have a stronger or a larger municipality and then try to track their developments with ours. So the samples that I picked up, it included both internal and external complaints. As you'll see in my findings, I'll tie this point back there. But the samples, the population of complaints that I have, it had both internal complaints which relate to, say, workplace harassment and things which are more internal nature, and there are also external or more of whistleblower related nature complaints such as fraud, waste, abuse, misappropriation, theft, these kind of complaints. So it is a mix of both currently the way it stands. So I had to review both of them as part of this review. But in future, we are hoping to have them as separate entries where we are tracking whistleblower complaints strictly and doing a detailed report on those versus having internal complaints separately and then maybe having that focused mainly by the management team because they don't really concern external parties or they're more of internal administrative matters. So the rationale again to identify this as an audit is because we wanted to, this area was never audited before, and it was a good audit candidate in terms of looking at efficiencies from other municipalities and also looking at how the process works out when a complaint is received at the region. Now, so coming to the results of this audit, I'm happy to note that there are the audit report is of low risk. I did not find any sample level or file related findings. There were two findings. One is on both of them, they were, an overview was presented last year around September. So we've been working on fine tuning it and doing a sample review after that. But they've been already agreed by the management to be implemented in the future. So at sample level, so for each file that I picked up as a part of the audit, I was looking at criteria related to how the complaint was, how the intake process worked for the complaint, how it was assessed, and how it was executed, and what was the outcome, and what are the other governance controls on each file. So those were the criteria I used to review each sample that was picked up. And there were two findings. One is on the complaint categorization. Like I said earlier, both the internal and whistleblower nature complaints seem to be lumped into one report, which is not, which kind of makes it difficult for us to manage it. And also, like, even for the reporting part, it becomes difficult to report it properly because it has both the administrative elements and also like the whistleblower elements. So it is better to split them and have proper categorization as a part of our policy, and then be clear on what falls within the whistleblower complaints and which does not fall into whistleblower complaints. The second aspect was on the awareness and the reporting part. So currently, though we have posters and other communication methods right now, we are not doing it frequently, or it is not being done like in a methodical fashion. Like, we don't have a protocol to do it regularly, like informing all the employees that they could reach out if they find anything, or they can, these are the channels where they can reach out to report if they have any issues, or even for the external public. And the second aspect was on the reporting part. We've recently started doing half-yearly reports. It started last year around October, and now we have the second report, but it'll become a future protocol, and we've discussed that in the previous audit committee meeting as well. So the bottom line is basically the process is matured within the region. It is working well. We have good investigators, and there is good independence during the whenever they're reviewing files, and the findings are good, and the documentation is really good for the samples are verified. But to make it even more robust, it is always good to look at the maturity of it and how we can improve it even further. So the report's intention is to make the process more efficient and make it more comparable to other Tier 1 municipalities. So with that, I think I conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your presentation, Harry. Are there any questions for our Manager of Internal Audit? Let's start off with Councilor Olson.
Yes, on your slide number 3, Harry, you talk about workplace conduct, and then we go on to falsification of records. In my mind, those are two very different things. Like falsification of records has to fall under a category of an error of integrity. And is that treated differently than just a simple error or a simple I think that's for a taxpayer, that's got to be a bigger concern, is an error of integrity over some of the other ones. And is the process, and I'll ask Mr. Meffey if this is if there's a different process for the different types of complaints?
Get a response to that?
Through your chair, yes. So Councilor Olson, we investigate under what the most applicable policy is, right? So our number one goal, I know Harry points out a number of things from a future context of us, how we collect information so that we can report out on it easier. Our focus has been mostly around ensuring proper diligence in any complaint that's received and reviewed properly under policy. We follow, obviously, best practice in any investigation that's required. And so you're absolutely correct. An investigation that happens under the Code of Ethics Conflict of Interest policy might look a lot different than one that falls under another policy.
That's it. Thank you, Chair.
So are there any other speakers? Councilor Redekop, are you coming forward like usual on the woods? It does not appear to be any, so can I ask for a mover and a seconder for 5-1 ACC-4-2026. Moved by Councilor Olson, second by Councilor Morocco. Is there any further discussion? It does not seem any, so can I ask for your vote electronically, please? And so moved. So we'll get along to the rest of the consent items. Is there anybody who wants to move any independently or on their own? Councilor Olson?
Speak to 5.2, if that's a possibility.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor
No,
Olson.
thank you. Thank you, Chair. Reading through this, it looks to me like the number of reports was, I don't know how I'd characterize it. I think I saw a number here, but I can't go back to it right at this moment. But on the report, it seemed to me like people are using the service. There was a substantial number. And it looked to me like there was a large percentage of them were justified and collaborated by the evidence in the investigation. Is that right?
So, Harry, you answer that?
Yeah, through you, Chair. When I reviewed the files that I picked up for samples, I've checked the file thoroughly from how we received it, how it was triaged, who it was sent to, how it was dealt with, and how it was concluded. So for the files I verified, there was strong evidence supporting how we disposed each case, and we took them seriously. But I cannot speak to the entire population. But for the samples I checked, they were really thorough, and I think we have Human Resources Director, and he can answer any specific questions you might have.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It looks to me like people are taking this seriously and they're using the services that we're offering, and I'm assuming that it's all publicized and properly posted and everything within the building and work sites. I'm making that assumption. Is that correct?
Through your chair, to your question, councilors, those, any investigations that we do that are required for us to post the results publicly afterwards, i.e., for example, health and safety, those are publicized, but other matters, if they're individual employee-related matters, they're kept confidential to the policy and our requirements that we are not to disclose certain information publicly.
Counselor?
Chair, I should have been clearer. I meant to say that do we have postings to say that this is the process and this is how it operates? I didn't mean the reports, which of course are confidential.
Anything further, Councilor Olson?
No, thank you.
You're okay with moving everything into block, as you just want to speak to the one item, correct? Or moving it,
What is it?
the balance in as a block?
I don't quite understand what you mean.
So
I have a couple more comments.
You just had a question of one of the items we're moving as a block. You're fine with that?
Oh,
The rest of-
okay. Well,
Okay, can I ask for a mover and a second here, if there's nothing you want to move independently? Councilor Morocco? Did you? Okay, so I need a mover and a second first, go forward. So Councilor Morocco, you okay to move? Second by Councilor Olson. And no further discussion, I'll ask the item to vote on electronically, please. And that has passed. So we move on to number 6. Is there any items of other business? Does not seem to be any, so everybody know that our next meeting will be on July the 6th, 2026 at 1 p.m. That being said, we adjourn at 1:57 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Oh, now Wayne shows up.